first, let's take a look at the components that make up this burner unit. So you got a little cap, and every burner is going to be slightly different depending on your stove, but they all have basically the same parts. You got a cap here. These grooves is where the gas spreads out through, around, and the cap simply gives a direction to the gas that flows. If you look over here on this side, you'll see a little white nubbin. That is the igniter. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see the igniter working. But that's basically what's going on. Now, right above the igniter, there's a small hole. And so the idea is that when the cap is on, the gas flows through these different channels and through the hole towards the igniter. Once the gas hits the igniter and hits the spark that is being repeatedly fired, then it'll ignite, and it'll ignite the gas around the channels. And of course, the cap keeps the gas outside of this cap. That's basically it. The first thing that you want to do is to clear that channel that connects the source of the gas to the igniter on the outside. You can use a safety pin, a paper clip, or something else. And it's really hard to see, but you can kind of tell where about it is if you find the igniter hole, or you find the igniter, and you sort of gently feel around, and you'll feel it drop in. And with the cap off, if you have the ability to take the cap off on your stove, you can see it. Hold on, there we go. You can see it drop on through. I will show you what I mean. There, I'll go that way. So it went through fairly clearly. And I know that's not going to fix this, because I've had this problem for a while and I've addressed it this way before. But just to prove the point, still no gas. Stage two. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to replace the igniters. So in order to do that, you need to figure out which model stove you have. And usually you'll find the information on the inside of the door to the oven, or somewhere down on the bottom tray. Any place like that, you can usually find it. If you can't find it there, you might be able to find it on the back of the oven. That's hard to get to, though, obviously, so hopefully you can find it at one of those two other locations. Once you find which model you have, look up online as to how they replace, or what parts they offer for your unit. And then you'll also be able to find instructions on how to access that. What we'll have to do is to take this cover off in order to get to the guts underneath. One of the things that holds the stove top in place are the burners themselves. So we need to be able to remove those units. And it's just a simple screw, and the burner comes off. And we'll do that, but we also have to remove these 3 screws right here, because they're holding the element underneath, attaching it to the cover. And of course it is a different sized bolt. I suppose that should be no surprise. There we go. And you may have noticed right there that the element below dropped down, since it's no longer being held to the unit. And then I'll do that for the other 3. And there we go. It comes free. It comes free. I forgot to remove the center unit. So this is the inside of your stove. A little bit of insulation. Not the cleanest thing, but the basics are here. Alright, so you have your gas line that runs out. It comes out of there's a little nozzle down inside the hole, and then you have your igniter that's attached right here. Now looking at all of these, most of them are pretty dirty, except for the center unit. So I'm going to leave the center one alone. And I'm actually going to replace all four because although only one of them is failing right now, I'm sure the other three aren't too far behind. So all you have to do is and so we have a little clip that holds it in place, and then the igniter will slide out this way. So now I just need to disconnect it from the cable, and we're done. So here's your igniter, pretty corroded up. And here is a new clean one. Most importantly is that the size of the head, the electrode up on top, as you can see, is much higher on the new one than it is on the old one. And this is this is not the worst. There's others on the stove that are worse. This is one that gets used to a moderate frequency. So you can see how bad it has gotten, and you know that the one that's causing me trouble is going to be a lot worse than this one. So then to replace it, and allow the clip to set in. Now, quick little note here. This is not the setup that, or the part that is sold by the company. The company wanted me to replace the entire assembly, the unit, the wire or the hose, all the way back to where it plugs in at the front. I didn't want to do that, so I found these little gems. I found these on eBay, and I wasn't positive they would fit until right now, when I ordered them. Obviously, as you can tell, I knew that this was going to be a step I was going to have to take, but I did some searching. I bought them on eBay with the hopes that they would fit, and luckily they do. So I'm going to replace the other four, and then we'll put the whole thing back together again. Quick note here. Some of the elements have two holes. Make sure you take note of which hole the electrode rests in so that as you reassemble it, you can put it back into the same place. The last one, the one that I actually want to replace, you can see is got quite a bit of carbon on it. I'm going to have to go and get a few more tools, maybe some pliers to try and get that one off. There we go. Whew. Ugh. Oh, it's gross. So everything's been put back together now, and one of the hard parts with this setup or with this type of work is that you can't test it without putting the entire thing back together. So we'll reassemble and hope that everything works correctly. And one of the things that you'll find is that with all that work and moving things around is it may not line up exactly in the hole, so it's going to take a little bit of work to get everything in. If you haven't move them too far, you should be fine. And if you have, you got to be careful of not putting a crease in any of the pipes. So before I push the top down onto the base, I want to make sure that I have access to all of the units so I can finish putting them into place. So before I snap this top into place, I want to get a couple of bolts down into the units to ensure that I'll be able to finish putting them in. And another thing I just noticed is that if I keep the top a little loose, I have some room to wiggle it around to get some final alignment refinements as I attach the elements. Once I get one bolt in place, it becomes much easier to get the others to line up. Working back to front because of the lift from the front side to access some of the back burners if the front is attached, I'm going to be pulling a lot more pipe out of its alignment. All right, I got one screw in each one of the burner units, and that's enough for me to feel comfortable setting it in place. Now, last thing about reattaching everything, this is a pretty heavy-duty tool, and so I'm not going to use it to finish anything off. I don't want to run the risk of damaging a bolt or stripping out the hole, so I'll move on to something a little gentler as I finish this up. Now we put the tops on. You want to make sure that the groove over here faces the igniter. Nope, I said that wrong. Not that groove. You want that groove facing the igniter. So there's a couple things to consider here. We haven't interfered with any of the gas lines unless we damage something as we were moving things around underneath the cover here. So one more reason that you don't want to, you want to be a little careful with how you move things around, but if you are confident that you move things minimally, then you don't have to worry about any sort of gas leak. If we had disconnected gas lines, that's one more thing to be aware of and considerate of, but this has been a fairly simple operation. So, reassembling. And then, of course, the knobs. We can't test it without the knobs. That one was not one I was worried about. But it's good to know that worked. Whoa, there's that one. Okay, that one works. And this, remember, is the one that I was originally trying to fix, or the reason why I was trying to fix this whole setup. and so it works much better than it did before. It's still burning off a little bit of gunk, and I'm betting that the lid is not seated correctly on top of the unit. So that will improve with time. Make sure that the center unit still works, even though, oops, I didn't mess with it. Now I just know that I set it up correctly. So the specifics will or may vary depending on your particular stove. But that's the basics of replacing igniters, and also possibly just cleaning out the channel that leads to the igniter if that's the problem as to why your stove won't start. So always start there, then move on to bigger things or more challenging problems. I do feel like we've gotten in this country away from fixing things because we depend on other people to fix them for us. Move this back a little more comfortable spot. Now, one of the things I feel that what we should be mindful of is, as we're investigating to see if it's something we can fix on our own, there's going to be a point where you go too far, where if you go any further, you're going to cause damage. And so if this is a newer practice for you, be aware of where that point is. Every time you disconnect or disassemble something, make sure you can reassemble it, because you don't want to end up having to call someone to fix your mistake or your mess. But I also feel like we've gotten too afraid to try and fix things. So there are lots of tutorials out there. This was a very general tutorial about fixing or doing some work on a gas stove. There are specifics for your particular model, unless you have a very unusual or very old model. So check it out. See what's out there. Try and do some work yourself. Let's take back our homes. Take back, fix things instead of throwing them away or making someone else fix them for us. I hope you found this useful. Thanks again. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel.